The alien fleet appeared without warning on a Tuesday morning. Captain Jake Miller was drinking his coffee at the International Space Station when the massive ships blocked out the sun. The vessels were huge, each one the size of a city. Their dark metal surfaces covered in strange symbols that seemed to move when you looked at them down on Earth. People stopped what they were doing and stared up at the sky. The aliens didn't wait long to make their intentions clear. A voice spoke, in every language at once, somehow reaching every human mind on the planet. "We are the Void Seekers," the voice said. "Your world will serve our purpose. Those who resist will be consumed. Those who submit will become part of the great emptiness." The first attacks came within hours. Strange beams of purple light struck major cities around the world. But these weren't destruction beams. They were something far worse. When the light touched people, they didn't die. Instead, they became hollow. Their bodies remained, but their eyes turned black and empty. They moved like puppets, following the aliens' commands without question. Military forces around the world tried to fight back. Jets screamed through the sky, firing missiles at the alien ships. The weapons bounced off like pebbles thrown at a sea. Mountain. Tanks rolled through the streets, but the converted humans walked right through the gunfire, feeling no pain, showing no fear. Jake watched it all from space, helpless. The communication systems went dead, one by one. The other astronauts with him, Dr. Lisa Park, Commander Tom Wade, and Engineer Bob Cruz, gathered around the small window that showed Earth below. Purple lights flickered across the continents, like a disease spreading. "We need to get down there," Tom said, his hands shaking as he gripped the radio. "With what?" Lisa asked. "The shuttle bay is damaged from the electromagnetic pulse. We're stuck up here." But Jake wasn't listening to them argue. He was watching something strange on the scanner. Small groups of humans were moving in patterns that didn't match the hollow ones. They were hiding, fighting, surviving. Even as the purple light spread across the globe, pockets of real humans remained. Down on Earth, a mechanic named Dave was learning this the hard way. He had been working under a car when the first beam hit his town. When he crawled out, half the people around him had those terrible empty eyes. But the other half were still human, still themselves. "Run!" someone shouted. Dave grabbed his toolbox and ran with the others toward the old subway tunnels. Behind them, the hollow humans followed at a steady walking pace, never tiring, never stopping. The aliens' plan became clear over the next few days. They weren't trying to kill humanity. They were trying to harvest something from them. Something they called the spark of consciousness. The purple beams didn't just make people into puppets. They sucked out whatever made humans truly alive and fed it to the alien ships. But the process wasn't perfect. Some humans could resist it, at least for a while. Scientists, soldiers, artists, ordinary people, there was no pattern to who could fight back. Children seemed especially strong against it, though no one understood why. In the tunnels beneath New York, a group of survivors had gathered. A teacher named Mary was trying to keep a dozen kids calm. A soldier called Tex was planning their next move. An old man everyone called Gramps was sharing his food with the hungry children. "They're not trying to kill us," Tex said, cleaning his rifle. "They want us alive but empty, like walking batteries." "Can we fight them?" Mary asked. "We can try," Tex replied. "But every person they convert makes their ships stronger. And our numbers keep getting smaller." Up in space, Jake had figured out how to fix part of the communication system. He managed to reach some of the survivor groups on Earth. What he learned made his blood run cold. The aliens weren't just from one planet. They had done this before, to other worlds, other species. They traveled from star to star, draining the life force from intelligent beings. Earth was just another stop on their endless journey. But there was something the aliens hadn't expected. Humans were different from the other species they had conquered. Humans had something the aliens. Calculations hadn't accounted for. As Jake signed off the radio and looked down at his dying world, he didn't know that this difference would be the key to everything. He didn't know that the survivors weren't just hiding, they were changing. And when they finally struck back, they would be something the galaxy had never seen before. The real war was about to begin. 3 months after the invasion, the world above ground belonged to the Hollow Ones. They worked without rest, building strange machines that hummed with alien energy. The machines grew larger each day, reaching toward the sky like metal fingers trying to grab the stars. Jake and his crew had finally made it back to Earth, crash-landing their damaged shuttle in the Nevada desert. The planet they returned to was barely recognizable. Cities stood empty, except for the hollow humans who wandered through them like ghosts. The real humans had gone underground. In the old subway systems, abandoned mines, and forgotten bunkers, the survivors had built a hidden world. They moved through tunnels and sewers, staying away from the purple light that still swept across the surface every few days, looking for more. People to convert. Dave, the mechanic, had become something of a legend in the tunnels. His knowledge of engines and machines had helped the survivors build generators and communication systems from scrapped parts. But more importantly, he had discovered something that changed everything. The converted ones have a weakness, he told a gathering of survivors in an old train station deep under Chicago. They can't think for themselves anymore. They just follow patterns. If we can break those patterns, we can confuse them. Mary, the teacher, had organized the children into small groups. She had noticed that kids could sense the purple light before it appeared, giving the survivors time to hide. The children called it the cold feeling, a chill that ran down their spines when the alien scanners were nearby. But the most important discovery came from an unexpected source. Dr. Park, who had been studying the converted humans, found that they weren't completely gone. Deep inside their empty eyes, something still flickered. Something human was trapped in there, fighting to get out. It's like they're prisoners in their own bodies, she explained to Jake and the other leaders. The aliens don't destroy the human soul, they suppress it, which means there might be a way to bring people back. The survivors had been divided into cells, each one operating independently. This way, if one group was discovered, the others could continue fighting. Tex led the military cell, planning raids on alien supply lines. A hacker named Nick worked on breaking into the alien computer systems. A doctor called Anna tried to heal the wounded and study the conversion process. Each cell had learned different ways to hurt the invaders. They discovered that the hollow humans stopped working if certain frequencies were played near them. They found that the alien machines could be damaged by specific types of electrical interference. Most importantly, they learned that the aliens themselves were not immune to their own conversion technology. The Void Seekers rarely showed themselves in person. They usually stayed on their ships, controlling the hollow humans from a distance. But sometimes they came down to oversee important projects. When they did, the survivors were ready. The first successful attack on an actual alien happened in the tunnels under London. A group led by a former soldier named Ben had trapped one of the creatures in an old bomb shelter. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes were black holes that made humans feel sick just looking at them. But when Ben's team used their converted alien technology against it, something amazing happened. The creature's own emptiness was turned against itself. It collapsed, its body becoming hollow like the humans it had converted. But instead of being controlled, it simply shut down, like a machine with its power cut. Word of the victory spread through the underground network. The aliens could be beaten. They could be turned into hollow shells, just like they had done to humans. but the process required getting close to them, and that was almost impossible with their army of converted humans protecting them. Jake had been working on a different approach. Using equipment salvaged from the space station, he had been trying to communicate with other worlds that might have faced the Void Seekers. Late one night, in a hidden bunker in Colorado, he finally made contact. The voice that answered was not human, but it was definitely alive, definitely real. It belonged to a creature from a planet called Kepler 442b, one of the few worlds that had successfully fought off the Void Seekers. "You must understand," the alien voice said through the static. "The Void Seekers feed on consciousness itself. They grow stronger with each mind they consume. But consciousness is not just individual, it is collective. When beings fight together, think together, dream together, they create something the Void Seekers cannot consume." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "You must become more than the sum of your parts. You must join your minds while keeping your souls. Only then can you turn their own weapon against them." Jake didn't fully understand, but he knew this was the key to saving humanity. The survivors would have to risk everything on one final gamble. Plan was insane, but it was their only hope. Jake and the other leaders had spent weeks working out the details. They would need to coordinate every survivor group on Earth to act at exactly the same moment. They would need to use the aliens' own technology against them. And they would need to do something that had never been attempted before: link human minds together without losing their individual souls. Dr. Park had been studying the conversion process for months. She had discovered that the purple light didn't just suppress consciousness. It tried to connect all the converted minds to a central network controlled by the Void Seekers. The aliens were essentially operating a giant hive mind, with themselves at the top. "We can use their network against them," she explained to the assembled leaders in the main bunker. "But instead of letting them control us, we become the controllers. We push back through their own system." Nick the hacker had been the first to volunteer for the dangerous experiment. Using modified alien technology, he allowed himself to be partially converted, enough to access their network, but not enough to lose his humanity. The process was agonizing. For 3 days, he lay unconscious while his mind fought to maintain its independence within the alien system. When he finally woke up, his eyes held flecks of the alien darkness, but his personality remained intact. More importantly, he could see through the eyes of every converted human on Earth. "It's horrible," he told them, his voice shaking. "They're all in there, all the converted people. They're screaming inside their own heads, but they can't control their bodies. The aliens are using their minds like batteries, draining their consciousness to power their machines." But Nick had also discovered something the aliens didn't know. The human minds in their network were beginning to connect with each other. They were sharing memories, thoughts, and dreams. Slowly, quietly, they were building their own collective consciousness within the alien system. The children had been the first to feel it. Mary noticed that the kids in her group sometimes knew things they couldn't possibly know: the names of children in other cities, the locations of hidden survivor bases, the plans of other resistance cells. They were somehow sharing information across vast distances. "It's like we're all having the same dream," explained a 10-year-old girl named Emma. "I can see what Tommy in New York is doing, and he can see what Lisa in London is thinking. But we're still ourselves. We're still different people." Dave had been working on the technical side of the plan. Using parts from alien machines, he had built a device that could boost the range of human consciousness. It looked like a collection of car batteries connected to alien crystals, all wired together with salvaged computer parts. "I don't really understand how it works," he admitted, "but when I turn it on, I can feel everyone. All the survivors, all. The converted people, even some of the aliens. It's like tuning into a radio station that broadcast thoughts instead of music. The plan required perfect timing. Every survivor group would activate their boosting devices at the same moment. Then they would reach out through the alien network and try to wake up the converted humans. If it worked, millions of people would suddenly regain control of their bodies. If it failed, the Void Seekers would trace the signal back to the survivors and convert them all. Tex had the hardest job. He would lead the military teams in direct attacks on the alien ships while the consciousness experiment was happening. The idea was to keep the aliens distracted so they wouldn't notice what was happening in their own network until it was too late. The night before the operation, Jake stood in the main bunker surrounded by equipment that hummed with alien energy. Around him, survivors prepared for what might be their final battle. Some prayed, some wrote letters they hoped their families might someday read. Some simply sat quietly and tried to prepare their minds for the joining that was to come. Dr. Park approached him with the final piece of the puzzle. She had been working with converted volunteers, people who had been partially processed but had somehow fought their way back to consciousness. They would serve as bridges between the human survivors and the alien network. "Remember," she said, "we're not trying to become like them. We're trying to show them what it means to be human. When we link our minds, we have to hold on to what makes us individuals. Our memories, our loves, our dreams. That's what will save us." Jake nodded and looked around at his people. Tomorrow, they would either free humanity or lose themselves forever. But looking at their faces, determined, frightened, but ultimately human, he knew they had already won something important. They had proven that the human spirit could not be broken, only temporarily suppressed. The final battle was about to begin. At exactly midnight, coordinated across every time zone on Earth, the survivors activated their devices. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Jake felt his consciousness expand beyond his body, reaching out through invisible connections to touch the minds of every human on the planet. In the alien network, chaos erupted. The Void Seekers had built their system to handle the suppressed consciousness of converted humans, quiet, obedient, and drained of will. They were not prepared for the sudden awakening of millions of minds all at once, especially minds that refused to be controlled. Nick, still partially connected to the alien system, became the focal point of the resistance. Through him, the survivors could communicate instantly across the globe. Dave in his Chicago tunnel could speak directly to Mary in New York, to Ben in London, to Anna in Tokyo. But more than that, they could share their strength, their determination, their refusal to give up. The converted humans felt it first. Standing, motionless in empty cities, working endlessly on alien machines, walking in endless patrols, they suddenly stopped. For the first time in months, they remembered who they were. A mother in Berlin remembered her children. A teacher in Mumbai remembered his students. A farmer in Kansas remembered the feel of soil in his hands. But the awakening was not gentle. The alien technology fought back, trying to reassert control. The converted humans found themselves trapped between two forces. They rediscovered humanity and the alien programming that still held their bodies. Many collapsed, caught in a war between their minds and their nervous systems. On the alien ships, alarms sounded. The Void Seekers had never encountered anything like this. In their travels across the galaxy, they had consumed thousands of species, but none had ever fought back from within their own network. They began emergency procedures, trying to cut the connections and isolate the rebellion, but it was too late. The human consciousness had spread through their system like a virus. Worse, it was carrying something the aliens had never encountered: the concept of individual identity within collective action. The converted humans were working together while remaining themselves, sharing strength without losing their personalities. Tex's teams struck at that moment. attacking the alien installations around the world. But they weren't fighting alone anymore. The awakening converted humans joined them, their bodies finally free to obey their own minds. Factory workers turned the alien machines against their creators. Security guards opened doors for the resistance fighters. Even some of the partially converted alien servants began to malfunction. Caught between conflicting commands, the Void Seekers themselves began to feel something they had never experienced: fear. Their own consciousness, designed to absorb and dominate, was being infected by human concepts of freedom and identity. Some of the alien commanders found themselves remembering things that weren't their own memories, glimpses of human lives, human loves, human dreams. Jake, linked to the growing network of human minds, realized what was happening. The aliens had spent so long consuming consciousness that they had forgotten what it meant to truly be conscious themselves. They were hollow beings, sustained only by the minds they had stolen. But now, exposed to genuine human awareness, some of them were beginning to remember what they had lost. Dr. Park, monitoring the biological effects of the consciousness link, made a startling discovery. The joining wasn't just mental, it was physical. The survivors were somehow sharing their immune systems, their healing abilities, even their memories of genetic information. Children in one location were healing from injuries faster because they were connected to healthy adults in another location. But the most important change was happening to the Void Seekers themselves. The alien commanders on the ships found their own conversion technology turning against them. The collective human consciousness was too strong, too chaotic, too alive for their systems to process. Instead of draining human awareness, the machines began converting the aliens themselves. One by one, the alien ships began to shut down. Not destroyed, but simply stopped as their crews became trapped in their own conversion systems. The purple lights that had swept across Earth for months flickered and went out. The constant humming of alien machinery fell silent, but the victory came with a cost. Many of the survivors who had volunteered to be bridges between human and alien consciousness were changed forever. They retained their humanity, but they also carried fragments of alien knowledge and awareness. They could see farther, think faster, and understand technologies that had been beyond human comprehension. Nick was among them. When he finally disconnected from the alien network, his eyes had returned to normal, but his mind carried the memories of every converted human he had helped to free. He remembered their pain, their struggle, and their ultimate triumph. "We did it," he said simply. "We're free, all of us." But as Jake looked around at his changed people and his changed world, he realized that freedom was just the beginning. Humanity had been transformed by the ordeal, and they would never be the same again. 6 months after the liberation, Earth was a world in transition. The alien ships still hung in the sky, but they were silent now, their crews converted by their own technology into something that was neither human nor alien. Some called them the Lost Ones, beings caught between two forms of consciousness, unable to return to what they had been. Jake stood on the roof of the rebuilt communications center, looking up at the closest ship. Inside, he knew, were creatures that had once been humanity's greatest enemy, now trapped in the same kind of emptiness they had tried to impose on Earth. The irony was not lost on him. The world below had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The consciousness network that had saved humanity hadn't simply disappeared after the victory. It had evolved, becoming something new, a voluntary connection between minds that allowed humans to share thoughts, emotions, and experiences while maintaining their individuality. Children adapted to it fastest. Emma, the 10-year-old who had been among the first to experience the shared dreams, now served as a translator between the older survivors, who struggled with the connection, and the younger generation, who saw it as natural as breathing. She could link with children across the globe, sharing lessons, games, and stories in ways that made traditional education seem primitive. But the changes weren't just mental. Dr. Park had documented physical alterations in nearly every survivor. They healed faster, lived longer, and showed enhanced resistance to disease and radiation. Some theorized that the alien technology had unlocked dormant potential in human DNA. Others believed that the consciousness network itself was somehow strengthening their bodies. Dave had become the head of a new kind of engineering course, one that combined human creativity with alien technology. The machines they built were unlike anything either species had created alone, devices that responded to thought as much as touch, powered by the same energy that sustained consciousness itself. "We're not the same species we were a year ago," he told Jake during one of their weekly meetings. "Question is, what are we becoming?" That question haunted many of the survivors. The consciousness network allowed for unprecedented cooperation and understanding, but it also raised troubling questions about privacy, individual identity, and free will. Some survivors chose to disconnect entirely, living in isolated communities that rejected the new abilities. Others embraced the change so completely that they seemed to lose their individual personalities, becoming part of a collective mind that thought in unison. Mary had taken on the task of helping people find balance. As a teacher, she understood that growth required both connection and independence. She worked with survivor communities to establish what they called consciousness protocols, agreements about when and how the mental links would be used. "We have to choose our connections," she explained to new groups of survivors. "The network is a tool, not a master. We use it to help each other, to share knowledge and comfort, but we don't let it make us into something we don't want to be." The converted humans presented the greatest challenge. Most had been successfully freed from alien control, but their minds bore scars from months of suppression. Some couldn't remember their previous lives. Others were overwhelmed by sudden floods of memory and emotion. A few seemed to have absorbed alien knowledge during their conversion, giving them insights into technologies and concepts that no human had ever understood. Nick had become their unofficial spokesman. His experience as a bridge between human and alien consciousness made him uniquely qualified to help others navigate their recovery. He had established rehabilitation centers in major cities, places where the formerly converted could learn to be human again. "The aliens didn't just take our consciousness," he explained to a gathering of rehabilitation workers. "They showed us what consciousness really is. Most of us never thought about what it means to be self-aware until we lost it. Now we know how precious it is." The alien technology presented both opportunities and dangers. Some of their machines could cure diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Others could enhance human capabilities in ways that seemed almost magical. But all of it came with the risk of losing the very humanity they had fought to preserve. Jake had been elected as the first leader of what they called the New Earth Council, a governing body that represented both connected and disconnected communities. His biggest challenge was deciding how much of the alien legacy to embrace and how much to reject. Looking up at the silent alien ships, he thought about the void seekers who had once threatened to drain humanity of its soul. In the end, humanity had proven that consciousness was not something that could be taken, only something that could be freely given or courageously defended. The survivors had come back without the souls they had started with, but they had gained something else, an understanding of what it truly meant to be alive, to be aware, to be human. And that, Jake realized, was the greatest victory of all. The war was over, but the future was just beginning.